Election day descended into chaos in Tanzania.
Out the Tanzania.
In Tanzania.
The only way to heal is to talk about the Tanzania that we want. In Dar es Salaam, in Dodoma, in Mwanza, and in Mbeya, and led to death.
As hundreds took to the streets protesting the exclusion of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's two biggest rivals.
The 2025 elections were supposed to mark a new beginning for Tanzania, a moment of renewal, hope, and national pride. But what began as a celebration of democracy soon descended into a nightmare the government would spend months trying to erase. When the votes were cast, the ruling party declared victory before the counting had even ended. President Samia Suluhu Hassan appeared on state television, her voice calm, her smile unwavering. She promised stability, unity, and progress. But in the streets of Dar es Salaam, Arusha, and Dodoma, another voice rose, the voice of the people who no longer believed. They had voted, but their votes had vanished. They had spoken, but their words had been silenced. And as they marched to demand transparency, the government's patience ran out. Security forces were deployed under the pretext of maintaining peace. Protests were declared illegal. Curfews were enforced. And when the first shot was fired, it was not to warn, it was to kill. Witnesses say the chaos began near the Kariakoo market. Crowds had gathered, waving papers, singing the national anthem, calling for justice. Then, without warning, tear gas filled the air. Moments later, the sound of gunfire replaced the chants. Bodies fell onto the streets that only hours earlier had been filled with laughter and hope. Official reports called it minor unrest, but hospitals overflowed with the wounded. Morgues ran out of space, and in neighborhoods across the country, families began to disappear. No one knew where the bodies went, only that by the next morning, the streets were clean. Too clean. The blood had been washed away. The bullet casings collected. The witnesses warned. Rumors spread faster than the government could suppress them. Some said the bodies were being taken to military bases for identification. Others whispered of mass burials in remote areas guarded by soldiers. But one word began to echo in every conversation. Every whisper, every message, dumping. People claimed the government was dumping the dead, secretly disposing of the victims to hide the true scale of the massacre. And for once, the rumors were not exaggerations. In the coastal region of Bagamoyo, fishermen reported seeing unmarked trucks driving toward the sea at night. They saw crates being loaded onto small boats, pushed out under cover of darkness. The next morning, the tide brought strange bundles back to shore. Authorities claimed they were medical waste, but everyone knew what they were. In Mwanza, a farmer stumbled upon shallow graves near an abandoned quarry. He found ID cards, shoes, and torn campaign posters buried in the mud. The local police cordoned off the area within hours, declaring it a construction site. Within days, the entire site was bulldozed and fenced. The government had learned that denial was not enough. Erasure was easier. Journalists who tried to investigate were arrested or disappeared. Independent newspapers published one final headline before being shut down. "Where are our dead?" The article vanished within hours. Its author, the government, insisted it was a sovereign matter, and the world hesitated. Statements of deep concern replaced action. Sanctions were discussed, but never applied. Global powers valued Tanzania's stability more than its truth. The United Nations called for an investigation. The Tanzanian delegation walked out of the session. The US State Department issued a statement condemning credible reports of human rights violations. But within weeks, business returned to normal. The silence became as heavy as the soil covering the graves. Inside Tanzania, fear replaced outrage. People deleted photos, avoided conversations, locked their doors at night. To question the government became to invite disappearance. Yet even in fear, memory survived. One night, a leaked video appeared online. Shaky footage filmed from a distance. It showed trucks arriving at a desolate coastal marsh. Uniformed men unloaded black sacks and tossed them into shallow water. A voice off camera whispered, "These are our brothers." Seconds later, the feed cut. The government dismissed it as fabricated foreign propaganda, but forensic experts confirmed the footage was authentic. The coastline matched an area near Sadani National Park, off limits to civilians. In Parliament, opposition figures demanded an inquiry. They were silenced before they could finish their statements. One was arrested mid-speech. The president remained silent. Her ministers denied everything. And yet, within her own circle, cracks began to form. A former intelligence officer defected, smuggling out a flash drive. It contained documents, orders, and photographs of nighttime operations. Each file was labeled cleansing zones. The evidence was undeniable. The government had created a network to dispose of the dead under the guise of post-election maintenance. International media finally broke the story. Headlines read, "Mass graves in Tanzania, a nation in denial. Bodies missing, government silent." The world reacted with shock, but not surprise, because for years, the signs had been there. The suppression of dissent, the manipulation of truth, the quiet removal of those who asked too many questions. As investigations began, the Tanzanian government refused entry to foreign journalists and human rights observers. Borders tightened, phones were tapped, and the few who dared to speak were silenced in ways that words cannot describe. Local authorities sealed off the area within hours, claiming the remains were from ancient tribal conflicts. But forensic testing done in secret told the truth. The United Nations Human Rights Council called for a tribunal. The Tanzanian government dismissed it as neo-colonial interference. President Suluhu appeared on television again, her tone softer now. She spoke of regrettable events and misunderstandings, but she never spoke the word killings. Whistleblowers continued to emerge, sending files, photos, and testimonies to international outlets. A document titled Disposal Procedure, Phase 2, detailed the use of industrial incinerators in remote areas and chemical disposal methods meant to neutralize biological evidence. Each revelation sparked outrage, and yet the government endured, sustained by fear, censorship, and the fatigue of a world that had moved on. But the truth has a way of surviving even when buried. Tanzania's economy had begun to crumble under sanctions and isolation. Foreign investors withdrew, tourism collapsed, and whispers spread that even within the ruling party loyalty was fading. A secret network of activists, journalists and families of the missing, determined to uncover the graves and tell the world what happened. They worked quietly, risking their lives, gathering names, photos, and coordinates. Every night, they uploaded new evidence to hidden servers abroad. Every dawn, another wall in the capital bore their message. It was no longer about politics. It was about dignity. Subscribe now to uncover Africa's untold stories, powerful voices, and in-depth investigations the world rarely shows.